Hello, and welcome to the tavern. In this episode of Gatekeepers, we discuss powerful characters. What is power? Is it strength of might, terrible knowledge, skillful displays of prowess, or is it the ability to encourage others to act in a desperate struggle? Is power a combination of all the aforementioned? Or is it an illusion maintained by someone who believes themselves to be greater than they truly are? And this week, we discuss all of these things. Without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? If you haven't already considered doing so, please consider subscribing to this channel and the channels linked in the video description below. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please make sure to hit that like button as it helps the channel to know if we are producing content you enjoy. Hello, my name's Jaide. Sorry for technical glitches there. I was supposed to be getting those slides going a little bit faster, but I apologize that. So joining me tonight is going to be MarHawkman. Welcome.
Good evening.
And also joining me is going to be Shadow of Shadow and Sun. Welcome.
Howdy, folks.
So, powerful characters. It's going to be an interesting topic, I think.
One of my favorites.
Now, normally I've got the characters who are powerful. Not necessarily, I do use characters that are powerful against my powerful players' characters, but generally it's the other way around, where I am the powerful player character. But who knows? Things we'll discuss. So, how is everyone this evening?
Fantasticals.
Oh, yeah. Got some stuff done this week that kind of satisfying to be done with, but annoying to have to deal with. Oh, well.
I know how that goes. So, let me just bring up my slides for the evening. So we have questions on the screen so that you in the audience can follow along. We may not get to all of the questions, but all of the questions we were considering are actually in the video description if you want to look at those ahead of time. Now, for the questions we don't answer this evening, maybe we can discuss it in our Discord chat, where you can join, and the link to our Discord is actually in the video description as well. So if you're not a member, consider joining and posing questions to us directly. I can find where I put my screens. Having all sorts of technical difficulties today. It's not there. I'll worry about that in a moment. So let me get to the first question of the evening. How powerful is too powerful? Is there such a thing in your games? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
No, okay.
I can literally come up with a challenge for any group, any character. I've run God campaigns. I've run everything from the kids on bikes all the way up to the demigods, gods, and empire builders. For me, the sweet spot is after let's just go with 10th level for most games, D&D, Pathfinder, stuff like that, where they can start getting the name, the title, the land, and having a little bit more security for their off time and more options to spread out and choices, instead of it just being, like I said earlier, one mission after another. This gives you time to allow them to build families, or build their empire, build their kingdom, and it really does open up a lot more doors. You can't do that stuff at low level in most games. Sure, you could start your game that way, but I just really like all the options. And for me, it allows me to really stretch my wings as a DM to create, bigger and better challenges. And by challenges, I don't always mean, combat. Too many people think that it's all about combat, And really, it shouldn't be. It should be about why they're in combat, why they're fighting. What is the real reason, the real goal that they're risking their lives? What is it that they're trying to attain, other than kicking down the door, taking the treasure, and killing the monsters, or whatever order.
Yeah, that's an interesting line of discussion, because one of the things that I thought of while reading over the question list is that one of the most important things to answer before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this is defining what constitutes powerful, because there's several different ways a character can be powerful. Like, oh, this person has really high base stats. Sure, that's one way to be powerful. This guy is level 12. That's one way to be powerful. But some characters are just really good at combat. Some aren't. Some are amazingly skilled at diplomacy, perhaps. And that's a big difference is in terms of what you can do with the character.
As for me, defining what power is, I've had plenty of characters who were just absolute combat brutes. The murder hobo type characters. But they were only powerful in might or in physical prowess. They weren't powerful in any other form. People didn't care to listen to them, even if they were powerful and could, wipe out entire, cities in a moment's notice. People didn't care to listen to them or care to pay them heed, because that was just the only power they knew. As I became more comfortable at the table and started developing, myself, as a player, and the characters I developed along with me, they became more politically powerful or knowledgeable. To them, knowledge was the true power. Physical might was one thing, but true power rested in the mind. And how someone used their mind to their advantage, or even used the enemies to their advantage.
Look at the most powerful people on Earth. Not one of them could go around with Mike Tyson. You know what I mean?
No.
That's just a fantasy thing. Maybe it's a exclusively a guy thing. I don't know, but there's so many different levels and ways to be powerful.
That actually is an interesting point, because like real world in the medieval times, a lot of kings, when they were young, actually were capable knights. It's just that they get older, they spend more time doing head of state things and don't even touch a sword, and they're out of shape and out of practice, and they'd be able to fight off someone who wasn't a particularly skilled soldier, but someone who was actually good, nah.
Yeah. Which I believe that brings us to our next question, and that is, what are some legitimate ways you handle, or better yet, challenge a very powerful character without forcefully retiring the character because they are more than you can handle? Now, Shadow, this I know is your question specifically. So I'm going to start with Mar on this one to get his take, and then I'll come back to you. So, well, Mar, what is your take on this?
The first thing that I always think about when it's this is like, unless a character is truly absurdly broken, no character is omni-capable. Like we said earlier, it's like one guy might be able to punch holes in cinder block walls. So if I want to challenge him in the dungeon, I'm not going to make it so that, it's a challenge that can be solved simply by punching a hole in a wall. It needs to be something that he isn't able to do easily. So maybe he has to figure out how to bypass a room that is flooded with poisonous gas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an environmental challenge. It's not going to hunt you down and kill you in your sleep unless you sleep in the room with the poison gas. But it is very much a challenge that the player has to overcome. And it's not quite as interesting as just throwing 12 hydras at him or something. But that's just not something you want to just start off with in an adventure.
Sure. What about you, Shadow? What are some legitimate ways that you handle or challenge very powerful characters without retiring them forcibly?
One, I would never do that. That's just that shows a weakness on the DM's part if you have to retire them because they're too powerful. Right off the bat, I come at them sideways. They're like Mar said. What are they good at? Well, what are they not good at? Well, that's what they're going to need to deal with at some point. And of course, there's those players who want to be good at everything. Well, fat chance. There's always going to be someone who started before you on your new path. Say a fighter wants to suddenly become, more roguelike. Well, everybody else in the rogue business started before him, and therefore will always be better than him. Barring, magic or super science or something like that. There's always going to be someone better, and there should always be someone or something better. If you designed a world that's that static and stays the same and doesn't grow as the players grow, you might want to rethink that strategy because the world's going to grow and they're going to help it grow. They're going to actually potentially create their own worst enemy through action or inaction. But to handle them, just broaden their horizons and giving them more to do, more options, allows them more ways to be challenged. The character who suddenly inherits land and becomes a big landowner and that sort of thing, everything regarding that's going to be a challenge. They have no idea how to do it. And they're going to, go into a meeting with someone and that person's going to, schmooze them and kiss their butt and make them think all great and then stab them in the back. And they weren't expecting it. Challenge created. There's going to be all kinds of different ways if you open up their horizons and let them, start doing new things that they couldn't do before. And if you're talking combat, all you got to do is, add a 0 to the monster's hit points or something like that. There's all kinds of ways of making a monster or a combat challenge, more challenging. And if they walk through it, let them have it. Don't take it personally. I've seen that too often. The DMs are, getting upset. The players walk through their big bad, boss monster at the end of the dungeon. Okay, take that as a learning experience. Now you know what they can handle with some relative ease. Try harder and don't take it personal. There's always another monster, on the horizon.
Absolutely. As far as retiring characters, that's definitely something I've never done. I've never forced a character into retirement. I've forced my own characters I've played into retirement because they just didn't fit the game anymore. They didn't fit with the party. They didn't fit with what was going on. So I'm like, hey, game master, this character needs to go. Doesn't work. He doesn't work for you. He doesn't work for the party. I'm going to retire him. So I've definitely done that maneuver. But I've never forced a character into retirement unless it was death. If you consider death early retirement, then yeah, I've done that plenty of times. But let's see here. Gonna try to keep up with the chat a little bit. Hard question. Is it the slow progression of challenges? Pulling lightly at the sides. Right at the base. Okay. I think the best way I challenge players is I find out what their goals are. And, not just as players, but as, I find out what the characters' goals are, assuming they have them. because that's something I definitely ask for from my players early on. Is like, where do you see this character going in the future? What do they want in life? And besides money, booze, and women, like, because that covers a few players I've had on my table. Like, what else do you want for this character? And when they tell me what their goals are, I'm like, they are telling me how to challenge them. Like, they are telling me like what they want and what I can put in the way of them attaining their goal or attaining their thing. So as long as you touch base with your players, and what they want for their characters, you can challenge them in just about any way possible. What they're good at. You know what they're bad at. And if you put in a fair mix of both things they are good and things they are bad at, you can come up with some surprisingly good challenges for them. Things that they may or may not have ever considered before. On to that. We're kind of cruising through some of these now. So the next question is, how do you maintain a sense of fairness in your games when dealing with powerful characters? And to that end, how do you ensure that all the players have meaningful choices and moments, especially with one character being particularly stronger than the rest? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, well, fairness, I don't know what that word means. Life isn't fair. It's intrinsically not fair. First level is not fair. Why should it fit?
Okay, let me put it to you this way. It's still a game, is it not?
Right. No, so I get it. There are, things from challenge ratings to monster levels and stuff like that. But sometimes they need to run. Sometimes they can't break down the wall. They've got to think of a new solution. There doesn't always have to be an easy solution right there in the dungeon, and they just have to find it. Sometimes they got to go back. Sometimes they got to get help from an expert. It does. There's no reason why they have to be able to handle every situation on their own with what's in their pockets. Making them go back and get help, or do some research. Especially if you're playing like a game of Call of Cthulhu, you're gonna have to go back to the library. You're in the haunted house, but now you got to go back to the library and look for some information, things like that. And as for meaningful choices, if you're creating an adventure or let's say a dungeon, you should leave a little something for each character. Give each player a opportunity to shine. Not writing the whole railroad story ahead of time, because that's unless that's what you're going for and that's what the players want, that's fine. But if that's not what they want, try to find an opportunity or create an opportunity to give them the opportunity to shine. Maybe even if you don't want to write it ahead of time, what I often do is I keep like a scoreboard for the players. Part of my experience point keeping process, because I do individual experience points. Because if you don't do something, you don't get the XP. Just because your friend Fred, succeeded at something, you may have learned a little, but you don't get full value. That just doesn't make sense. But I'll keep a hash mark tally of every time they did something special or something really unique or worthy of bonus XP. Well, if I'm looking and and it's getting toward the end of the evening, and player Billy Bob hasn't had a chance to shine, well, I can improvise, and throw something in the game, to sort of even it out, so everybody's had the chance. At least they might fail, but give them an opportunity to the thief hasn't come across a trap all night. Let's throw one in and see if he can make it. Because real quick, that's something we have to be really good at, is improvising and making shit up on the fly. That is like one of the most crucial skills of being a game master. Try it sometime. Try running a game with nothing but a scratch pad of paper, your dice, and a shield if necessary, if you use one for the game. Put your books off to the side. Just have an empty notebook to keep track of what's going on, but see how much you can improvise. And if you got to pull stuff out, so be it. But see how much you can do with as little possible.
Yeah, that's fair. How about you, Mar?
Well, a piece of advice for game design that I heard almost 20 years ago was actually something as a quote from the guy who created the Cosmic Encounter board game. And this was that the basic logic behind the game, because in that game, it is not fair. Every character has a game-breaking ability. Everyone has something no one else can do that changes the rules of the game in their favor. The idea here, though, is to make all of them equally broken, to put it one way.
I like that.
Okay.
Not because you can't just like balance it for like as equally good, because of the fact that they do fundamentally different things in different ways and don't interact with the game in the same way. Like one person, their entire shtick might be getting to choose where to attack and have options for combat that other players can't do at all. Another person's just really good at combat, but they're affected by the regular random draw thing, so they don't really know where they're going to do combat this turn, and so on. It's like just two quick examples from that game. Don't want to get too deep in that, but that applies to TTRPG subs, just because you have your warrior, you have your thief, you have your mage, you have your cleric. Each of them has a fundamentally different role in the game, and you can't really directly balance them against each other because of how differently they operate. So
Okay.
Fairness in there is more a matter of making it so that each of them has a role to play in the scenario. So, it's like you have a cleric. Okay, well, I mean, if he's a healer, then your party is probably going to get injured at some point and he'll need to heal them. Sure, okay. I mean, there's other things clerics can do, like purifying poison, like the whole thing I mentioned earlier, that example of the room filled with a poison cloud. A high-level cleric might be able to just cast nullify poison and make the room safe to walk through.
Okay.
But
I mean, that's definitely something to consider.
It's one of those things. It's like different character classes have different options when playing the game, so you can't like look at them as equals because of the fact that they're different and have a different role to play in the story. So as a game master, you just need to give each of them a reason to be there. But at the same time, you kind of also need to not write the story so that all of them have to be there all of the time. Like,
right.
If a cleric casting cleanse poison is the only way to get through that room full of miasma, that would be a sucky adventure if you don't have a cleric who can do that in your party.
And while I do kind of agree with what Kai is saying here, at high level, fairness doesn't exist mechanically. I'm talking about fairness from you as the game master to the players. Rules be damned, mechanics be damned, because I'm not interested at that point in the mechanics of the game so much as I am making sure everybody has a moment to shine and a moment to actually be in the limelight of the game.
This is actually something that I've seen an issue with when running pre-made modules, is that the module isn't tailored towards your current party composition and might just have a completely different party composition in mind, and thus just someone might get just completely ignored by it. because that's just how it was written.
And recently I did a playtest of a game that's still in alpha. And there were moments in the game where one player was being very, centric, very focused. Like the spotlight was focused on them really hard because they had this exalting moment. And it wasn't exalted. The game exalted, but it kind of felt like that to an extent because it was like that moment where the player exalts for the first time and becomes this like godlike power. And while that did happen during the game, like I made it as there was an opportunity for it to happen. And I focused on it, and the player actually said that he was getting goosebumps because of how it was presented and how we handled it, or how I handled it, and everybody at the table really enjoyed it. But then the very next moment, the spotlight moved from that individual and taking center stage to the next player in turn order taking center stage. And becoming, the next person to be able to do something powerful and poignant at the table. And I can't get into what the playtest was, so I'm not going to answer questions on that. But it definitely had moments where the individual players had, these shining beacons of moments that a lot of them said were really great, and they even as they were leaving my home and going out to their cars at like 1 o'clock in the morning, they were like, dude, that was so awesome that you got that moment. Like, yeah, what about you? And they talked about it moments after it happened, and even when they returned the following week, they were still talking about some of those moments that the individual characters had in the previous session. So even though one character technically was more powerful than the rest of them, I gave each of them a moment to shine. And that to me is probably more important. Even if you have characters that can cleave entire buildings in half, the characters who can't do that are just as important to the group and your evening as the one character who can.
Yeah, as Mac Thompson points out, it's about having fun. So everyone needs to have their time in having fun.
Yeah,
or they don't come back.
Or they don't come back. Fortunately, I've had them back every week that we've done the playtest. Unfortunately, the playtest is over and everyone's schedules went to 4 Winds again. But who knows? I might get the group back together in a month or two.
Is it your project or somebody else's?
Someone else's project. With NDAs attached. So.
Gotcha. Same here.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, be prepared to wing it if need be. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, everyone needs their magical moment. Yeah, because if your players don't have the moment to shine, and they start asking, why am I here? That's where the game starts to fall apart. One character can't be the main, or one player can't be the main character. They're all the main characters. The group itself is the main character. So you have to, move the spotlight.
It's not a TV show where, Captain Kirk is always the star.
Mm-hmm. And as far as making sure that all my players have meaningful choice or moments, this is something I've always strived to do is when a player makes a choice, that choice is permanent. It's part of the world now. I make note of it and move on it, even if it's a minor thing. But if it's a major world-changing choice or event, it has ripples throughout the entire game world. Even like 20 years, game world time later, I'll be talking about the thing that one of the player characters did in the previous campaign, even though it's like 20 or 100 years later, because it had a rippling effect through the timeline. Yes, a character's demise can be their moment to shine. As a matter of fact, this past week, actually just yesterday, when we were wrapping up the playtest, there was a character or one of the players' characters who fell down, and they managed to get back up, but it was a moment where the stakes could not be higher, and they were willing to sacrifice themselves so that the party could succeed in their original mission, which had nothing to do with the combat that was going on. So.
Yeah, that's another one, is that, TTRPG isn't just about combat. It's not a war games. You have other things to do. And, like you said, it's like your actual big picture goal. Combat is often an obstacle to be overcome rather than the goal.
Right.
And that's these days, that's so almost the opposite of what people think this hobby is.
It's the opposite of what I thought the hobby was for the first 5-10 years that I played. I openly admit I was a min-maxing McMurder hobo. Like that's how I thought the game was meant to be played. My ideas have changed. And as far as that self-sacrificing moment, their goal was actually to try to recruit someone to their cause. They ended up having to get into a fight with a rival group because the rival group also wanted that person for their cause, which was counter to the party's cause. The only difference was the rival group was willing to sacrifice an entire town to acquire that person forcibly. So the party showed their devotion to attaining this person through the right means, the right way. That the person was eventually swayed, like, oh, okay, yeah, no, you guys are the ones I really should side with. Because it was their dedication to saving the town and saving the individual from the rival group that really swayed the character, because the character wasn't going to listen to just words. The character needed action. They needed to know what the party was willing to do to win them over to their side. So. All right, let's get into the next question, shall we?
Absolutely.
How do you define and measure power at your table? Are there quantifiable metrics, or is it something a little more subjective? Mar, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I mean, obviously you have character levels, but one of the things I've noticed that's interesting in Hyperborea games, and this applies to other games too, but it's something that I've personally seen most notably in Hyperborea games, is getting magic items or some other special piece of equipment that is just ridiculously OP. Like in one of our adventures, we had a guy pick up what was not even magical technically. Technically, it wasn't a magical item. It was just a flamethrower. It's just that it was a powerful enough flamethrower that it could one-shot a lot of enemies in groups.
Yeah.
Because it was an AoE weapon. Yeah. That just annihilated a whole bunch of enemies we had to deal with in later adventures. And it, made his character, a lot more useful because of the fact that his character was, highly limited in his combat options otherwise. But with that, suddenly he becomes a serious force to be reckoned with.
I also I am in agreement with you on that, Flatey. While I do enjoy my sessions of D&D 3.5 mostly, or Pathfinder, I still do really enjoy WoD. Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Forsaken, Mage the Ascension. I really do enjoy those point build systems. Because it's more about the character rather than what the character's level is. So, how about you, Shadow? How do you define and measure power at your table?
Obviously, it depends on the system or the game. Power in a Call of Cthulhu game is way different than any of your superhero games, or some of your more modern versions of fantasy role-playing games. But power, ultimately, for me, is what the players can do, not just in combat and destroying things, but in who and what can they affect? Can they schmooze and rub elbows with the real power? The emperors, the kings, the queens, the presidents, things like that. Do these people even know they exist? Are they taking orders from these people, or are they giving the orders? The more people and other forms of power that you can also interact with and manipulate or control, that's the real power. Again, like in the real world, you may be the world weightlifting champ, but does anybody know your name? If you walk into anywhere, are people looking forward to meeting you? Are they pushing each other out of the way to shake your hand? Well, if not, then you don't really have a lot of power. You may have a power or some power, but ultimately power comes from politics and how much you are in charge of the world around you, how much you can manipulate the world around you and control it without ending up in jail, dead, or homeless and on the streets.
That's actually an interesting thing I've seen discussion of with Hollywood celebrities, is that a lot of them, when they were at the height of their career, they'd walk to the supermarket and people would be like, "Hey, nice to meet you," because they recognized them from the stuff they'd done on TV. But then, later in life, they come to the realization that people don't recognize them anymore, simply because of the fact that people remember them as they were 10, 20, maybe even 30 years ago. And that's not how they look now.
Yeah. Funny story. I was at a convention and I bumped into Loretta Swit. Most of you guys, old guys, will know who I'm talking about. If not,
Houlihan.
Right. I bumped into her and I'm like, I'm walking down the aisle of a convention and, I see this woman dressed all in white, older than me, obviously. And I'm like, the aisle was pretty much empty, for whatever reason. I mean, not completely, there's people on either side running their little stands and stuff like that. But, there weren't a lot of people there. And I'm like getting closer and getting closer. I'm going, oh my God, that's, Loretta Swit. I'm like, holy crap. Why aren't you mobbed by people, And she says, well, things change as you get older. And, think about her, back in the day, she wouldn't have been able to go into a grocery store. She'd probably have to have people go do it for her.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that, same thing about, the guy who played Hawkeye Pierce or like a Radar even. Adam Alden. And then I can't remember who played Radar.
Gary Berger.
Yeah. So sure, with fame, comes a measure of, power. You have a little bit of sway. Yeah.
If you choose to embrace it, there are many celebrities that just want to be left alone. But, politicians and things like that, they have so much power that everywhere they go, they have to have an entourage just to keep those people away. Even if nobody knows who the hell they are, they still have to take that, those precautions because their power level is so much greater than, your average celebrity. Hell, Keanu Reeves rides a bus. Okay, everybody knows who he is, but if he wants to, he hops on a metro and goes from point A to point B. So you would think that he would, want, bodyguards and all that, but his power is different than real power.
Right. As far as like how I measure or quantify power at my table, yeah, I kind of mentioned it in the opening. Like, is power strength? I mean, it can be strength. I've had plenty of characters who could lift entire buildings, using magic or other means. But is power knowledge? I would say yes. The power can be knowledge. I had a character whose entire focus was attaining as much knowledge in that as he could, even though one mind couldn't contain all the knowledge of the universe. He didn't care about that. He was consolidating knowledge, and to him it was consolidation of power, because if it was something he didn't know but he had a book on it somewhere, he could learn very quickly about it. And to him that was true power, having the ability to know things. He built entire spy networks just to acquire knowledge. And to him, that was power. So, I mean, power really has a lot of definitions. And, even your NPCs can be powerful. If you have them, in a position to be powerful in that position. So, like, a king is powerful over a nation, but is he powerful outside the nation? He's just another man. Yes, he is surrounded by an army of soldiers who are willing to die for him, but is he truly powerful outside his own kingdom? You could say the same thing about a wizard. Is a wizard powerful because he knows, these epic, ninth level spells or ninth circle spells? Well, yeah, he's powerful, but once he's out of those spells, he's no longer powerful. So, I mean, power has ebbs and flows in it, and it can come and go at a moment's notice. As far as quantifiable metrics, to me, it's very subjective. It's not really quantifiable. Again, this is because power can come and go, and it's within the perception of the person who is having the power, lorded over them. Is the peasant going to notice that the king is riding by them? If they've never seen the king before, would they even know who it is? You're being told to bow before this person, but you've never seen the king. You don't know what he looks like.
I mean, Skeletor brings up a point, though, is that having people being able to influence people with your looks can also come into that. But it's one of those things. It's like, does this work on everyone?
Not blind people.
But well, one of the things you were saying, though, about like influence, though, is that influence is also something that's a bit fickle and transitory, because, like, say you're an ambassador, you have a whole lot of powerful friends. Well, if those powerful friends are currently in a position where they can give you favors, then you have a lot of, clout and the ability to actually get things done. However, if your powerful friends are no longer around, suddenly you don't really have that anymore.
I'm famous in my group of players, as a player rather, that especially at one particular table, I attract NPC cohorts and followers, not necessarily because I'm powerful, but because I'm not interested in fighting them. Generally, they're NPC like bandits or soldiers who are arrayed against the party, and they're being paid for their services to fight against the party. I'm always the first character, 9 times out of 10, I'm the first character to go, what are you being paid to do this? How much would it take you to just go away? How much do I have to pay you to just walk away from this? I have that Mal and Jane moment from Firefly of, how much is he paying you? Really? And you get your own bunk? Oh, you have to share with him? Oh, well, okay. How about this? I pay you double what he's paying you, and you get your own bunk. I've pulled those moments in so many games. I've had so many followers that hirelings basically, that my character was able to find information at a moment's notice. He could just, write to one of his people, have the message sent, and be like, hey, find this information, get back to me as soon as you can. The next week, he'd have the information he needed to be able to act on something. Because he built a network of spies and informants and smugglers and scholars. That, to me, that is like exceptional power. The ability to be able to go in, across an entire nation and acquire information in a very limited amount of time when, your foes don't have that same network, don't have that same kind of power or influence that they can pull the same strings. To my character, that was true power.
That actually reminds me of something, or inspired me just from what you just said. Power is going to be different for each player character. Their own perspective. Some people it's going to be the power to disappear and be left alone. Some people it's going to be the exact opposite, the power to force people to do what they want. So think about, your players, what it is they want, their goals, their dreams, their hopes, etc. And you want to challenge them, you're going to need to know what those are. And if you know what they are, then you can go after them to force them to defend them. And that's another way to challenge your players, is by making them defend what they love and hold dear the most.
And Flady, Flady makes a good point here. Having craftsmen or experts as cohorts rather than fighters. A lot of the NPCs that were arrayed against us that were malleable or able to be swayed, they were not necessarily fighters first. Some of them were expert craftsmen. Some of them were into banditry because it made more than farming, or made more than what they were doing. And the only reason why they turned to banditry and turned against the party was because it paid better than what they were doing. So my character saying, "Hey, I'm willing to pay you to just go away." They've doubled their wages and they didn't have to do anything. The ones who actually signed, and they didn't die. The ones who signed on with my character and like, yeah, you know what? I'll work for you if you're willing to pay me. And the upside is I don't have to go out and actually get my hands dirty with things. All I've got to do is go find you information, and I don't have to fight anybody anymore. I don't have to risk my life. Hell yes, I'm going to do that. So, and I presented logical arguments to the game master, and the game master's like, that's a great argument. I'm going to allow it. And the character's going to work for you now. So if you, the game master, are open to letting your players sway your intelligent combatants to their side as followers, that's another form of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about earlier with the whole thing with having followers is that I mentioned the whole thing earlier. It's like you need to have, X ability to accomplish Y task. You can, say you need someone to read the ancient inscription in the ancient tomb of who knows what, because you need to figure out who's buried in the tomb, and for whatever reason, and your character just can't read that language. You can, just find somebody to read it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this instance that Mac brings up, Jabba was powerful. He was a crime lord. He had a lot of connections and a lot of resources at his disposal. The moment he was threatened by a thermal detonator, oh yeah, the power shifted immediately away from him. But he knew, that eventually that, because he didn't know who Leia was at the time, he knew that, that character was going to make a mistake because the character didn't know what Jabba knew. Jabba knew if the character walked 5 meters away to the center of the room, it didn't matter because you just pull the lever, the detonator would fall into the pit. You didn't have to worry. All right, let's get into the next question, shall we? Question number 5. What are the potential pitfalls or challenges of having powerful characters in a party, such as overshadowing other players or making encounters too easy? I believe, Shadow, this is your question. I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this one.
Well, the pitfalls are that the players, you know, are going to walk through some of your challenges, especially if they're physical challenges. Let them, you know, use that as a metric for the next time. You know, there's nothing better than letting the party, you know, get a swole head and think they're going to walk through everything, and then something real simple just jams up their whole afternoon or evening. You know, they thought, oh, it's just another iron golem. Hey, Fred, you take care of it. You know, take my light work. And then next thing you know, Fred comes flying back into a wall because it just looks like an iron golem. It's actually, you know, a titanium, adamantium, or something else.
Mithril,
you know,
yeah,
right. You know, just, you know, use it to your advantage. Don't let them think that, oh crap, you killed my bad guy. I can't handle you guys. Just like make them think that was the plan. Make them think you wanted them to walk through that iron golem or that, you know, pit fiend or whatever. You know, only to have something even bigger and badder. You know, something's holding the leash of the pit fiend. What was that? Uh-oh. Now here comes the real challenge. You know, let them have those epic moments, but, you know, use them to your advantage. You know, never let, you know, a tragedy go to waste. If you can, you know, use it for, you know, for later. Now, overshadowing other players and making encounters too easy. You know, that's going to happen, but the overshadowing other players, that's usually, you know, that can happen in a first level game. You know, some people are better at this hobby than others. A lot of people don't want to be the big bad hero. They're fine with being the sidekick, you know, or the B or C team. If the overshadowing thing is an issue, talk to the player, find out, you know, hey, are you not into it? Were you having a rough night? You know, do you not know what your character should be good at? You know, maybe this character isn't actually a good fit for you, because if you're playing your ideal character, that sort of thing never happens, does it? You know, when everybody's playing their, you know, their absolute favoriteest character in the whole wide world, they're looking for a way to flex. You know, it's when, you know, they're not comfortable with something else. It could be the character, it could be, you know, their job at home, you know, the family life or something like that. Encourage them to, you know, this is your time to, you know, let all that crap, you know, disappear. Find out, you know, what is it about this character that you love? Start doing those things that character would love to do.
Absolutely. What about you, Mar?
One thing that I've seen happen multiple times in the Hyperborea campaign I was in was players being like, okay, this character is, you know, OP, and not necessarily us in a position where the character has no challenges, but more that the character is in a position where it's getting kind of boring to play the character because of the fact that it takes exceptional challenges for them to have any difficulty at all. So they would, you know, have the character retire and maybe possibly be able to go back to playing that character later if they wanted to, but for the meantime, just play someone else. And
as for, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The other thing with that one, though, is that some of the time it was actually because they did run into something that actually was a danger to them. And it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave this character and do someone else now.
As for me, when it comes to pitfalls of, powerful characters or even challenges of powerful characters in a party. One of the biggest pitfalls that I have seen and I have done is I had an NPC that was traveling with the party. The NPC was more powerful than some of the characters in the party. And this was an oversight on me as a younger game master, because the character was not meant to stay with the party indefinitely. They were meant to be a mentor character, following the whole heroic journey, and where you've got a mentor. Eventually, they leave, and you've got to go out on the world of your own. The concept there, though, was they kept wanting the mentor there, and the mentor was able to solve pretty much every problem that they came across. I'm like, okay, I need to get rid of this character. Like, this character is not supposed to be the spotlight of the game. This character is supposed to be teaching them about the world and teaching them how to survive and how to move through the different kingdoms and different planes of power. The character is not supposed to stick with the party. And I had I had two players that were getting really annoyed by this NPC that was so powerful, so much more powerful than the players were. And they came to me and were like, "Hey, this character's got to go." I'm like, "Yeah, I know they got to go, but everybody, I'm trying to make the character exit, but you've got two or three other players who keep wanting to drag this character back. It's time for them to move on. They don't need this character anymore. They've taught them everything they need to know. So, the next session, this character's going away by one means or another, and I don't really care which. And eventually
NPC.
Huh?
You can always roll up a new NPC.
Oh, yep, absolutely. So, my problem or my pitfall there was my NPC was so powerful, it was taking the spotlight away from the people who were supposed to have the spotlight, and that was the players. Now, me as a younger game master, I didn't fully understand these nuances, these moments where the players need to have the spotlight on them and not me as the game master. And that was a failing on my part, and I fully admit that I failed as a game master at that point. I was young, I was dumb, and I was too focused on what I was doing. But I eventually learned from my mistake, and then I learned, I need to focus more on my friends, my players, and make them have these moments of amazing grandeur that, and that exalt their characters in some way. So that was definitely a challenge as a game master for me and a pitfall of mine. Now, as far as challenging a party that has, maybe one or two exceptional characters in it, I'm not going to say powerful, but I'm going to say exceptional. You can still do it. It is thoroughly possible. One of the things, and this is definitely a problem I had as a game master early on, was I would send one major foe at a time at my players, and action economy would just eat my foe alive. And I didn't understand what I was doing wrong for a long while. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just swarm them. I'm going to swarm tactic them, because I will have action economy on my side for once. Because I'd become the adversarial game master. A lot of the things we've talked about this year, I've talked from a position of knowledge because I made those mistakes. So learn from me. Don't make the same mistakes I did. I urge you. So I became the adversarial game master, and I started throwing numbers at my party. Taking away the advantage of action economy. And I had one player who was a one-hit wonder in a recent game, and they were so powerful that they would swing and they would do triple the amount of HP any single major foe I had would have on them. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to start challenging this guy other ways, because he's a paladin. I'm going to start challenging his morals, because nothing screams, paladin challenge more than a moral fight. Because if you can challenge a paladin to kill something that is unarmed and not a threat, they've become a fighter without feats.
Well, that's if that's your goal, that's a little underhanded,
But that was so because the character was so powerful, he could kill any demon in a single hit. He didn't have to worry about demons ever. It was the fact that, yeah, it wasn't even making the demon stronger. It was putting the character in a position that he had to make hard choices. That's how I challenged the player. The player was exceptionally powerful in a fight. They were not as powerful in moral dilemmas. They still made the right choices, but they had to make sacrifices along the way to see those choices pay off. Anyone else have anything to throw in on this one?
No, I'm good on this one.
Okay. So the next question is, how do you handle character progression for powerful characters to keep them to keep the game engaging and challenging for them, avoiding stagnation, but also not leading to a party wipe? Mara, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I'm someone who prefers slow progression overall because, I actually see a weakness of some game systems as being that, a level 2 character is expected to be twice as powerful as the level 1 character. That makes it so that, you very, very quickly outlevel anything that would have been even somewhat of a challenge from you if it was level 1. Which, okay, yeah, sure, your character is more powerful. It makes sense that they would be able to outfight it now, but also it's a matter of degree. You get really, really powerful, and that, nah. And it's kind of like gaining levels, becoming more powerful doesn't necessarily mean you can, go from lifting 100 pounds to lifting a ton. No. But okay, but obviously there's the whole avoiding stagnation thing though. That is
it's a hard one.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you need to have them get stronger, but not super strong.
Yeah.
But the party wipe thing though is a lot of that is about what the enemy you're fighting is, because one particularly memorable game session, we had a thing that on paper should have been a reasonably even fight. However, due to what was a rather questionable decision, our party gets ambushed seemingly at random by enemies who get a bonus whenever they ambush someone. And that means that they have the potential to one-shot people before they get a chance to act. That was one of those things where it looks on paper like it's even, but if you actually stop and think about it, it's really not. Oh, well.
What about you, Shadow?
Personally, I despise low-level games. I've done everything as a player and a DM. If I never see another orc, kobold, goblin, any of those things, in a fantasy game ever again, thank you. I know that's not going to be the case. So for me, I like to see them get out of that low-level monotony as quick as possible. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 plus years. You're going to be hard pressed to impress me with a group of orcs against a first level party, unless you're just trying to literally come up with a total party kill in the first encounter. I want to see them get to do the things that everybody else is afraid to do in a game. I want to see some new stuff for a change. So I'm more in their corner than not. I want to see them get to that point, because it's much more poignant to have a death or a total party kill when the players are like 7th to 9th level. They've put something into it. That's when they're, everything's on the line. You make up a first level party and everybody dies, everybody laughs and goes, oh, okay, we'll try it again next week. Or maybe they roll up some quick characters and start over again. I want to see him get to the fun stuff. You know what I mean? To where, Star Wars, great example. Okay. Luke as a character. Okay. First movie, second movie, third movie. Oh my God. When I saw that movie for the first time as a kid, it was like, oh, wow, look what he can do. Look how badass he is, just, waving his hands, like he owns the place, I want the players to get there. And guess what? He still ended up, kind of, getting a little beat up. I mean, he wasn't expecting a freaking Rancor, right? That was like, whoa, there's stuff like this in the galaxy. Your lightsaber, what are you going to do with that? Right? Okay, you might, take out his kneecap, and then you are, flat with the earth, one with it, a centimeter thick now because you're goo. I want to get to those really epic things. There's only, you can only be so epic in the low levels. You can have some cool moments, but most people I know, they don't talk about their first level through 4th level, 7th level characters. They talk about those characters that have done stuff, big stuff. That's, for me, that's what it's all about. Like I said earlier, I would love to be able to run games where people go, oh, can we start at 10th level? Hells yeah. Let's do this. You all have a castle or a tower or whatever, or a spaceship, blah, blah, blah. Let's do that. Let's skip the dumb crap. That's what's great about Traveler is you can go, you know what? I don't want to run the Farm Boy. I don't even want to run the Han Solo. I want to run the Ben Kenobi, the old guy who's done it all and just wants to be left alone. And, crap, the rebellion's calling again. Tell him I'm not home. Something like that, a character like that that's, got the whole, low levels behind him, and it's nothing but, epic adventures from this point on out until, your former student cuts you in half.
One moment, I'm responding to chat real quick.
5 dots is 5 dots. I have no idea what that means, Guy.
World of Darkness.
Guessing it's Exalted or something like that.
Exalted has up to 10 dots. World of Darkness has 5 dots. 5 dots is cap on any ability or skill.
Okay.
So, as far as me, how do I handle character progression for powerful characters? The same as other characters. There's really no difference. It's how they choose to proceed on their own. Do I prevent them from taking a level in something? No, that's my player's prerogative to take whatever they, whatever I'm allowing in the game, that's their prerogative. But how do I keep it engaging and challenging for them? I target what they're not expecting a lot of the times. I play to their strengths and I play to their weaknesses. I've played enough TTRPGs to be able to gauge, my players and, understand where they're strong and where they're weak at. And I can hit them in their weak spots. I can, play to their strengths and make them feel so powerful, but I can also knock them down a peg because, again, I've got the experience to know what I'm looking for and how to do that. So as far as, not making it a party wipe, I've wiped parties, and it wasn't even me trying to challenge the one player who had an overpowered character. I've wiped parties because people made poor decisions, or the dice were not in their favor.
I mean, they wiped their own party.
Yeah, the party may have made poor choices, or they may have made a choice where there was no getting out. And I let them do it. I let them do it, make all the decisions every step of the way. And when they realized it was too late to escape and too late to get out, they lived with it. And the players were happy with that outcome. Did they want to retry the game? Yeah, some of them did. But I decided, nope, we're not going to retry it. If we do retry it, you will find your corpses, your previous character's corpses, still there.
I mean,
or they might be animated against you.
That is a pretty good thing you can do, though, because you have all right. You have a new party going into the dungeon that the previous party died in. Like, oh hey, now you find their corpses and get to loot them.
Yeah. Just working my way through chat here. Wiped cart parties because I was a new game master. Yeah. I have also done that, Flatey, where so my second foray into index card RPG, ICRPG, I ran Doom Vault, and I wiped the party in the third room. It wasn't by accident, it wasn't on purpose. It was definitely by accident. I didn't understand the power curve of the game at that time because I was still new to that game system. So I didn't understand sending the forces I had arrayed against the party would be that deadly. Because I hadn't done the mental math to figure out not just the action economy, but the hit point economy. Because hit point economy in index card RPG is so much lower than D&D. Players start with 10 hit points. That's it. And it's hard to get more hit points. You have to take milestone rewards to gain more hit points. So you have to be willing to sacrifice like a piece of gear or some awesome ability in order to get more hit points. And I didn't fully understand it at the time. Yes, there are ways to pass 5 dots in various storyteller systems. I think in Vampire you can get up to 10 dots in certain things, but it's difficult as hell. And that's only if the game master is going to allow it. And I think you have to be under 10th generation Vampire to be able to do it.
And not the ones that are basically just like extra broken vampires.
10th gen, yes and no. 10th gen vampires are more focused on their position than they are what they're capable of doing. They have more concern about their clan, their city, their little fiefdoms, and they are very much not concerned about the minor problems. They're looking at bigger pictures. So generally a 10th gen vampire, if they have more than 5 dots in something, it's probably presence.
Well, one of those
4th gen for 10 dots. Okay.
You have to sacrifice so much to get that level of power that the sacrifice itself is now your weakness.
Yes and no. To get to that point, you either have to be an elder or you have to have diablerized yourself all the way to that point, which if you start diablerizing lower gens than yourself, the lower gens take notice very quickly, and they generally don't take kindly to it because they're trying to figure out, why are you doing this? Are you an Assamite who's just lost control, or are you an actual threat that we need to turn to dust immediately?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
a vampire who just randomly goes around killing other vampires is someone the other vampires are just going to be, so who's he going to kill next?
Well, it's more of a it's risking the masquerade, and the elders can't have that.
Yeah, that too.
So yeah, if you're in a vampire game and you go around murdering other vampires, especially lower gen than you, and diablerizing them, you get the council's attention very quickly, and they will dispose of the trash in their estimation. So, when our star stud starts dying, by then, Flady, they will have already used humanity to build space colonies, and they will have fled the solar system by that point. So, let's see here. Let's get to the next question. Number 7. Can you share some examples of memorable moments or encounters involving powerful characters in your games, and how they impacted the story or the group dynamic? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, I'm going to go with a memorable death.
Okay.
I had these players who were essentially running 4 insanely powerful co-rulers of what was a very evil, or formerly very evil, pirate intergalactic kingdom, where they had just stole and conquered everything in their path, having left their home empire. And obviously that, ticked off the previous emperor, their former, liege and lord, and to the point that this raged over centuries of, turmoil and strife. And, one of my players was getting ready to leave the campaign, actually the hobby. And they said, okay, well, one last game. And he got to face off with his mortal enemy, the actual emperor. And they're duking it out, and the emperor pulls out 2 basically Stormbringer daggers. Okay, they're going to steal your soul, eat it. You die, you're dead. It's over. You cannot come back. No wishes, don't care, none of that crap. And mind, this character, he'd been playing this character for decades, at least 2.5 decades. He's like, oh crap, this just got real very quickly. So someone tossed him an equivalent blade. Mind you, it was only a single blade versus the emperor's, 2 daggers. He's going in close, and they managed to do the Jakar and Londo and simultaneously kill each other. No more. Bad guy's gone, player's gone. He gets to leave the hobby knowing that while he took out his mortal enemy, he can't come back. He made the decision, I'm leaving the hobby, doing other things, blah, blah, blah. Got to do it. Memorable moment, high-level characters, high-level consequences, and all the pomp and circumstance that you can possibly imagine to end a great character. Not the campaign, but that person, said, I'm not playing anymore. I'm doing other stuff. And it was epic, high level as you can imagine. And it impacted everything from that point on out, because 1/4 of the bad guy's empire was now without a leader. And that created a whole new series of challenges. They're all evil. Okay, well, are we going to divvy up his kingdom? How's that going to work out? And we're still trying to figure that out, because no one wants to make a move without, having one of their own against them in just the, worst possible situation. Mind you, they're all really good friends, but when they're playing their characters, it's pretty cutthroat.
I feel you there, Flady. I'm going to be starting 50-hour weeks again here soon. So maybe even up to 60-hour weeks, depending. I feel you on that one. So, Mar, how about you? Can you give some examples of moments or encounters where powerful characters in the game made a impact on the story or even the group dynamic?
Well, I've mentioned in the past how in one of the Hyperborea campaigns, we had this paladin who was seemingly nearly invincible. I mean, most enemies would need a nat 20 to hit him. He was that tough to actually harm. And that was a defining aspect of the group dynamic in the game, is that, you know, you have this guy who would always lead the charge into any fight because he knows that the enemies need to literally get a lucky hit where they can't hit him at all. And then one game he dies. I mean, that particular thing there, though, is that, remember how I mentioned that there was that giant sandworm in that one game?
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
A couple times, yeah.
Well, that's how he died.
Oh.
See, it's like the player who was playing the character was actually playing him as being suicidally reckless. And it was that suicidal recklessness that caused him to aggro the sandworm intentionally. And, well, he wanted to die, and the sandworm liquefied his body.
Got what he wanted.
Careful what you wish for.
But see, because a lot of the fights we'd been in previous games, he had, you know, charged in and aggroed the boss and distracted the boss while the rest of us were doing things. But it was because his character was suicidal and trying to get himself killed and just failing at it. Which is what made that particular moment so memorable, is that he finally ran into something where, actually, I don't really need to, like, seriously try to die. In fact, having the party get wiped because I aggroed this thing, oops.
For me, the example that comes to mind for me, there are so many that I could go on about. But the primary example I have is the party was up against a deific evil, or at least on the power of God level of gods. While fighting this thing that was it was still waking up. It wasn't even fully awake yet, and it was already corrupting the world around it, causing it to fall into darkness. Kind of like the what game is that? I can't remember what the name of the game was. The RPG is awful, but it was for PlayStation and Xbox at the time. Dragon Age. That's what it was. Dragon Age. But the dragons are so powerful that they, corrupt the world around them. It was kind of that concept. But so the player, he was a powerful character at the time. Decided, okay, there is one chance we have at stopping this thing, and it's going to take everything I have. And the character used his powers, his abilities, his feats and spells to his advantage, and he was a menace on the battlefield. There were days I didn't know if I could challenge him directly, especially in a fight. And the character's like, okay, this thing does not take damage normally. It doesn't, it's not wounded by elemental attacks from the outside. What is it like on the inside? What is this, can this thing actually take damage on the inside? does it have armor plating inside and out? So he went to find out. Character went, diving into this thing's maw, and opened a planar rift with a bag of holding and portable hole. Only thing is, the portable hole was filled to the brim with alchemist fire. He was wondering if it was flammable on the inside or not. Character ended up dying, ripped a hole to, I think, either the plane of Mechanus or it was the plane of Earth, one of the two. And ended up destroying the dragon from the inside out. Just tore it, basically turned the dragon inside out itself. And the character, for all of the headaches that the player gave me with that character, the character's death was very poignant and it was very meaningful, because the party had no actual way to fight this thing. It didn't even have stats really. I just kind of threw it on paper. I'm like, yeah, that looks good enough. And they're not meant to fight this thing. They're meant to just see this thing for a moment and know that it's going to return at some point, and they're gonna have to deal with it later. But no, that character's like, nope, dealing with it now, and he dealt with it right then and there. And its death had a rippling effect on the rest of the game. People cheered, from land to land, and didn't realize the other dangers that were present because, like, what do we have to worry about? The dragon's dead. There's nothing else left to worry about in this world. We can handle everything else. They really couldn't. They just didn't realize it at the time. So, having, really epic character deaths is definitely something that makes memorable moments. But the other memorable moment I have, I like I said, I've got so many of them, was a character who, he was not meant to be a frontline fighter. Yes, he did carry a scythe as a weapon, but he was a caster. He much preferred, fielding, enemies from across a battlefield 300-400 feet away and lighting them up like it was 4th of July. Like, that was his combat style. He did not want to be in melee combat, but he carried a scythe. It was an artifact weapon he had found in his early days. He got trapped in a force cage. This is D&D 3.5. And the monster that trapped him there was inevitable. And I had to survive, I think, 6 or 7 attempts at stasis. I nat 20'd the first few, and then I don't know how, but I did not fail the others that followed. And every time he made an attack, I made an attack of opportunity and chunked the crap out of it. The character was powerful, but he was a spell casting power. He was never meant to be a frontline fighter power. And that was the moment where the character's like, yeah, no, you're not taking me down. I will not allow this kind of character. And it changed how the game master challenged that character going forward. No more was it I'll just put that character in melee combat and he'll just have to suffer. No, it was okay, that player, my character, me as a player, he started challenging me in other ways. Like, what can I do to challenge the player and the character without making it a contest of wills or contest of magic or contest of physical prowess. And he really put me through the ringer and got my brain going, because he started giving me mental challenges and challenges that were more social encounters than anything else. And there were some players who were not into what my character was getting into, but it changed the group dynamic to a certain extent, because no longer were we just wholly focused on being these combat monsters. We were focused on being how can we be diplomats? How can we maneuver ourselves through this world without getting exiled or strung up or being hunted by entire nations. And that was where my character started coming out as more of a politician than a mage or even a combat power.
Well, I'm not sure if I actually told you this one before, but my first Hyperborea character in that campaign I was in, mentioned earlier, I made several characters in Hyperborea. All of them ended up dying. However, the first one I made had the strangest history in terms of that, because she's a magician. Okay, magicians in Hyperborea are dedicated casters, or are supposed to be anyways. She didn't really have any particularly good combat skills. Well, she's an Eskimo from a fishing village, who's also a magician, so I decided that it would be a good idea to have her learn as a bonus weapon proficiency how to use tridents and just stab things with those. Because of the fact that magicians in Hyperborea really don't actually get a whole lot of spells per day. And when you're fighting against enemies who are also casters, just stabbing them actually works quite well, thank you. But the funny thing with that character, though, is despite the fact that I have someone who's, okay, she actually had good HP for a magician, but defensively, that was really all she had going for her. She didn't get killed in battle. She got killed when one of her party members set off a trap. That was one of the things that made that particular scene most memorable, is that you have this magician who's been going around stabbing fishmen with a trident and living to tell about it, and then she just gets blown up.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. So, what advice do you have for players who want to create and play powerful characters, and how can they do so while maintaining a sense of fairness to everybody else at the table? Or is that even a concern? Mar, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, is that, it's all about having fun. It's like, if one person is doing this weird sort of metagame power game thing and the others aren't, you can, as the game master, I guess you could say, just like suggest things that would, even if they're not intentionally picking things to make them their character more powerful, not necessarily choose things for them, but point them in that direction. No,
and that
Flady.
question is
No, it was one of the other party members. He picked up a skull with magic runes inscribed on it, which players can actually use that ability to take the skull of an enemy, scratch magic runes on it, and then just like throw it at some enemies as a bomb. Well, you can also leave them placed where if an enemy bumps into it or touches it, it'll explode. Well, this guy was looting a cabinet, and one of those was in the cabinet, and he didn't bother to, look before he did anything. And it's just one of those moments where the player outside the game is not actually paying attention to the game and just tells the DM, it's like, oh, I'm just going to grab all the stuff in the cabinet and stick it in my pockets.
Whoops.
Without actually asking the DM what the stuff in the cabinet was.
Yep. So what about you, Shadow? What advice do you have for players who want to play or create powerful characters? And how can they do so while maintaining a sense of fairness to the other players?
Right off the bat, keep up or get left behind. I don't play a lot of games where you can metagame or build a character so that it's broken. Your characters usually are I'm not going to say simple, but the games are usually older games, and those sort of aspects don't come in. And if you don't do something, you don't get. I have this rule at home with my boy when I go shopping. It's like, you don't go, you don't get. Okay, if you don't go, then you're not getting anything out of my going. Other than food, obviously. But if you want something special, you better come with me. If you guys at the player table want to be big damn heroes and you want to have epic games, then do epic stuff. For the most part, everybody I play with has played a whole lot of games, done a lot of the stuff. They know all the tricks and tips, to get past certain obstacles and things like that. But for the most part, you get out of it what you put into it. So put as much as you want into it, as much as you can, and hope that you're going to be successful. And if you're successful, there's probably a reward at the end of the tunnel, something to make it all worthwhile, and take advantage of that to the best of your ability.
Nope. Did we just lose Shadow there?
No, I'm here.
Oh,
Okay.
your picture froze.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Hey, what's up, Bruce?
Oh, I guess it was temporary.
So, as for me, the advice I would give to a player who wants to create powerful or play a powerful character, be cognizant of your fellow players. You're not. It's not about just you as the player. You're not the only player at the table. So be cognizant of your fellow players. And I've seen this happen so many times where players have gone, I'm going to create the everything character. I can do everything. There's no point for anyone else to actually be here. I am all that needs to be here. Okay, if you're going to play that kind of character, one, expect a lot of commentary from the other players. Have thick skin and get used to it. If you're going to try to overshadow literally everyone at the table and try to do their characters' jobs better than their characters, are supposed to be ready for the snide comments. Be ready for, just have thick skin. Because you're going to get it from the players, if not just the players, also the dungeon master. So if you're going to do it, focus your character in a path, but focus your character in a direction, and be powerful there. My characters, as an example, I've built physically strong characters. I've built magically powerful characters. I've built politically powerful characters, but they're not all the same character. They're multiple different characters throughout, my 25 years of gaming. I personally don't try to step on the toes of my fellow players. It just leaves a bad taste in at the table. Like other players don't appreciate players who step all over them. And to Shadow's point, step up and be a presence for you players who are not, who are being overshadowed by a player who is the everything and can do anything and do everything everybody else can do but better. Step up. Be a presence and don't be walked over. Don't be stepped on by the one player who just happens to be really good at crunching numbers, or really knows a game very well. Step up, be heard. That's what I would say to you.
Another adage. Sorry, I thought you were.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You know the old adage, jack of all trades, master of none. I highly enforce that. Go ahead, you can be good at a whole bunch of things, but you're never going to be great. It's just not the way things work in the real world.
Yeah, that's actually one of those things that I always find interesting, is trying to make a character who is using the same rules as a party of 4 character classes and somehow trying to figure out how to min-max stats so that you can do all 4 jobs. Logically, you should need to have trade-offs of, like, you're not going to actually be as good at melee combat as a fighter if you're, also a really good healer or whatever. Or at least you shouldn't be anyways, because this actually kind of goes into the whole like game balance concept, where having 2 characters that are broken in different ways is, fine and good because they're not directly competing. And it's not a situation where one of them can do everything the other one can do, but more so. That is something that is a problem. But it's when they're doing different things, though, that's fine.
I will say this as well. If I have players in a group and 2 of them become adversarial towards one another, and they keep trying to see who's the better character, who's the better builder of characters, you're going to find that one of them is going to get bounced from the game. And it's going to be the one who angers me first. Because I'm not going to tolerate that. If you're going to be putting down other players and belittling them and belittling their choices or their method of play, you are not going to sit at my table for very long. You will not have a place here. And I am not afraid to tell players to get the hell out. Yes, I will gatekeep my own players if they're going to be jackasses.
Well, what about the rivalry, the Legolas and Gimli sort of rivalry?
That is fine. But when a player, and I'm not meaning character, I'm meaning player, turns to belittling other players for their choices in how they made their character and what they choose that character to do, I will not tolerate that. I will bounce them from the table so fast and so hard. Because I'm not going to put up with it.
Well, one RP thing I was in many years ago, I left it for that reason, is that we had players making, snide comments. It's like, oh, you're playing that. Okay, then. And that's like, why are you upset that I'm playing something just because you don't like the thing I'm playing?
Mm-hmm. So, and I've had that. Oh, go ahead, Shadow.
Mar, I would have to ask what that was, because depending on what it is, there are some things that I won't allow. If you're running a copy of Drizzt, or you want to play Wolverine or Hawkeye, because that's all learn some new tricks. Not happening.
Well,
or the some of the other characters that have come about, since those characters. I know there's some other ones.
Well, this was actually an RP thing where we were playing pre-made characters, and for some reason, certain of the players just felt the need to belittle anyone who tried playing certain characters.
But if they didn't even make up the characters, do they forget that fact?
That's the part that I was never able to understand. In real life, I still to this day don't understand why they were doing it, and I even tried asking.
Were you the one who made up the characters as the referee?
No. I was just a player in the game and just like choosing one of the characters, and
that's incredibly weird.
And like I said, that's the reason why I left that game, is because the person who was the referee was just letting them get away with it, and it didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, and my point about that, that kind of player who is going to make powerful characters and then belittle others for their choices, like that is something I also don't understand. I can't get behind. And if you're gonna do it, make sure that the players are thick-skinned enough to handle that. Otherwise, you might find yourself without a table. So that's my advice, to people who want to play characters or play like that. Next question is, how do you involve powerful, if I can speak today, powerful characters in your overarching narrative or world building of your campaign to make them feel significant or invested in the story? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Involve them in the world. Make them fall in love with some place or some goal or some ideal. Make them want to be part of the world they're in. Tell them there's a holler they grew up near as a kid, and hey, it's up for sale. You could buy the land you used to play on as a kid, and build your castle up on the hill type of thing, or just whatever it takes for that character. Find their soft spot, their nostalgia, their whatever for a place, and make them be part of it, influence it, be able to change it, manipulate it, bend it to their will, remodel it, whatever that character's desires might be, and let them have a home. Make them have a place that they can feel safe at for a while until they really love the place. Then you invade it with Lizard Man or something like that. But do whatever you can to make them attached to it. It's not just another town they're passing through with a bunch of too many consonants in the name, and they're going to forget it when they get to the next town and the next town and the next town. Make it special, and make it special to them.
What about you, Mar?
Back.
There's, of course, the idea of the whole plot important character, but you don't want to have a story that requires a certain character to survive, because that kind of takes the, excitement out of actually playing the character. But having a character who has a personal inside knowledge of an area, like in Hyperborea games, one thing with Hyperborea is that each character has their own background. Like, your character might have grown up in Chromarium, so you know things about Chromarium that outsiders won't. So, if the adventure is taking place in Chromarium, that gives your character a edge. This isn't something that's actually super powerful, though, unless it's a really, really dark secret or something very well hidden, and not just knowing where this best bakery is. But that certainly does add an interesting wrinkle to the story, though, is because you, instead of going from an omniscient narrator perspective, you have one of the player characters being kind of sort of like the guide, leading the rest of the party around. And in terms of, big picture being powerful, it's not. But in the moment, that character is kind of, in charge and doing the things because of the fact that they're in a position where they're the person who can get things done.
Okay. As far as involving powerful characters in the overarching narrative, I do this mostly with NPCs, and I also do this with player characters, but reputation precedes powerful characters wherever they go. If a character is powerful, they are known. They are known in the world. They are known in regions. In D&D, using 3.5 again, at level 5, your local legends, your local heroes. Level 10, you're regional heroes. People know you wherever you might roam within a region. If you get to level 15 by some means or miracle, the king knows your name. The local the monarchs of the kingdom know your name. They've heard of you. They've heard your exploits, your deeds, your abilities, your powers, whatever the case might be. So for me, involving powerful characters means their reputation precedes them wherever they go. There are expectations that are placed on those characters, based on what people know of them and what stories have been told of them. Bards line up to learn of your exploits. They put your deeds into song and legend and spread it throughout the kingdom. If you are an exceptionally powerful character in one specific field or art or form of power, it opens doors that would be otherwise closed to anyone else. You're famous. You have the ability to call upon certain favors or certain actions to aid you at some point. And again, this is something you kind of earn by your deeds, especially if you're a fair and generous individual. And if that's what you're known for, people will line up to try to take advantage of you, sure, but you will also have benefactors trying to aid you as well, trying to figure out how they can also grow their power and their fame or fortune alongside you. And they'll be willing to do favors for you and do things that you yourself may not be able to do. So that's how I involve the power or at least the perception of power in my games for the characters who do take those steps and become powerful. Granted, I also have games that where characters ascend to godhood. And then the power doesn't only precede them, it pervades the land around them. They are the world at that point. They are part of the world and the ever-growing story of the universe. All right, so last two questions. See if we can knock them out. Should game masters intervene or intervention be considered for powerful characters to maintain a game's sense of fairness? And what methods do you use to do so without feeling unfair to the players? Mar?
Well, one thing that I've seen people do is loot that gives characters, useful new abilities. Give it to the person who's not the most powerful already. I mean, you have the fighter who's walking through the dungeon, basically like one-shotting at all of the enemies. Like, okay, don't make the loot a super powerful new sword, even better than the one he already has. Make something that is for someone who was struggling to contribute to the adventure, other than maybe like picking locks or what have you that their character class does.
Okay. What about you, Shadow? Should a GM ever intervene or on powerful characters?
Can you give me like an example of what you mean by intervene?
Okay. So, let's say a player is, who's got an exceptionally powerful character, is not just, one-shotting everything, but they're also able to open any door, defend against any spell, and overall basically hog the center stage away from any other player from ever being able to do anything because they are just that powerful. Should a game master intervene?
I've never had a player character in any of my groups that could do any of that. They may get lucky with die rolls. They may, do really well. I'm just going to pump up the volume a couple more notches. I like an ebb and flow. I like them to do well. Then I want them running for their lives, and then maybe they'll do a little better, and then running for their lives or hiding or something like that. I've never had any one character that I'm just like frustrated. Even when playing like Palladium and things like that, I can always come up with something bigger and badder than they are. There is no limit. I don't have games where the mechanics can get out of my control, so to speak. You make up whatever you want, bring it in. I'm not going to use the monster manual and only the monster manual. I'm going to make up my own stuff. 90% of the stuff you're going to bump into isn't in a book. Okay, I may write it down, but I'm not going to, and I'm not going to just make it up and go, he still has more hit points, and keep adding to that. If I write it down, I write it down. That's what it's got. But I've never had players in the games that I've run, be able to, do something that I don't want them to do because I don't care what they do. I do like competition among my players, but I don't care if they're successful or if they die, as long as we keep playing. And if it goes real well for them for a while, rest assured, I'm just lulling them into a false sense of security. So the next time they bump into a skeleton and think it's just going to be a pushover, sorry, it wasn't even a skeleton. It was a robot and it exploded in your face. I'm always going to have something like that. So I guess the answer would be no.
Okay. I also agree. GM intervention should only happen if there is a problem at the table that is not directly involved with game mechanics. If it is a problem between players, that is when a game master gets involved. If it's a problem about mechanics, roll with it and find other ways to challenge the player who's become so powerful. And if other players are crying foul and be like, well, this is unfair, this is unfavorable. Maybe if players are calling you out for being, for showing favoritism, towards one particular player, maybe you need to look at, what you're doing and reevaluate, your relationship with your players. Because it shouldn't be about just one player. It should be about all the players at the table. Lastly, last question of the night with only a few minutes to spare. How do you manage player expectations and ensure everyone is on the same page regarding the level of power and or style of play in your tabletop role-playing game campaigns? Shadow, I'm going to start with you.
Pre and post game discussions. Before the game, what do you guys want to do tonight? Awesome. Let's do that. That sounds like fun. I wasn't expecting it. Make them think that you enjoy it even when you don't. Always bring that enthusiasm to the game, and after the game, give them an opportunity to tell you what they liked, what they didn't like, the after action report, the autopsy, whatever you want to call it, and take those notes. Those are the most important notes you're gonna take. Is what they want. I'm not saying cater to them, but find a happy medium between what they want and what you want, because you're not there to serve them. You're there to have some fun too, and if it starts feeling like you're just a biological computer generated, entertainment system, fix that right quick. You need to have some fun just as much as they do. And if it's not, fun, find out what you want, find a way to insert it into the game at some point. If you like tricking them up with, puzzles or overly complicated traps, cool, do that. If you want to make up brand new monsters that they've never heard of, do that. If you want to, throw in, other challenges, do that. That's, make the big super mega dungeon. Okay. If that's your thing, then do that, and, take notes of before and after, and, try to make it so that, you know, everybody's having a good time, but don't forget about yourself.
What about you, Mar? How do you manage player expectations and ensure that everyone is on the same page?
Yeah, basically the same thing Shadow says. Like, you know, it's like you talk to the players about what's expected of them. You know, I mean, you know, it's like when you have I often play with people who really aren't, you know, into the whole like min-maxing thing. So, you know, when you're playing with people like that, you need to ensure that everyone in the group is aware of the fact that that's the expected level of min-maxing, is someone who's just making a character because they think that sounds cool. I mean, you know, it's just like you don't want to have a person who's literally the only person who ever does anything.
Okay. As far as me managing player expectations, I set it out from the very beginning. I want to know what my players want their characters to be able to do. I want to know what their goals are, what their expectation of play is. I will first lay out at my session 0, the very first night of the game. I will lay out the concept I have. Like, here's the idea I would like to test. Let's see where it goes. And make a character within these parameters. And I'll set the parameters of the game. And I'll also explain what the game engine is, what game system we're running in, or what the rules are, all that. And then I will ask, what kind of character do you want to play? What kind of goals do you want this character to have? Like, tell me about what you see in the future for this character of yours. So I start knowing what my players are wanting to get out of the game. And then I check in with them, generally at the end of every night with questions, comments, or concerns. I ask that, almost every night, like, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments about where this campaign's gone, where the session went? Do you have any concerns about where the campaign is going, about your character that you designed? I need to know as a game master if there's any problems. Take a pulse on what's going on in your game. That is the easiest way to understand what your players are wanting and what you are able to also convey to them what your expectations of the players are, and where you thought that they were going. And if it has changed, they need to let you know. Like, oh no, I'm not pursuing that goal anymore. Okay, when did that change and why? What is the new goal? Can you give me an idea of where you want this character to now go? And I can, start theorizing or planning in that direction. And that wraps up this evening, I believe. Does anybody have any final comments or questions or concerns about powerful characters?
Don't be afraid of them, guys. When you get to that point where you're afraid of it, you're also in danger of losing the hobby or the game or the campaign. Embrace it. Look forward to it, because trust me, every player wants that moment, wants to be able to make a character that gets to be powerful, regardless of the game. They want that feeling. That's what they're there for in the first place. With the exception of those folks who just want to stay, 1st to 7th level for a decade-long run. That's cool, but understand that most players, especially if you look at the current environment, most players want to have that feeling of power, and it's not always just combat, and if it seems like it's only combat, find a way to entice them with other kinds of power, because power corrupts.
Or just throw obstacles at them that you can't just punch into oblivion.
Yep. So, with that, I do thank all of you for joining us this evening. If you haven't already done so, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as it will help the channels grow. You can find the other channels in the video description below. And if you haven't already done so, please consider hitting that like button if you liked tonight's content. If you did not like tonight's content, it's fine to hit the dislike button. I accept all types of feedback. I am not afraid of your, dislikes or, if you liked it, awesome. Without further ado, that is the end of Gatekeepers this week. We'll see you next week with a new topic. So enjoy your evening and enjoy your week. Catch you on the next episode. Have a good night, everyone.